2. Introduction. Ecologically, population is a group of individuals of same species capable of interbreeding and occupying a particular area. Population dynamics refers to trends of population growth with time, and the study of human population is called demography. In human demography, a population is a set of humans living in a given area like a village, town, or city. Populations are not static entities, and all the organisms have the capacity for substantial population growth. The potential for reproduction is always greater than achieved. A human female produces 300 to 400 ova in the course of her lifetime. If conception occurs at maximum rate, a female can produce one young every 12 to 15 months or 20 to 25 young in the course of her lifetime. This is still 8 to 10 times higher reproductive potential than the average family size in most countries. A population has several characteristics such as birth rate, death rate, and age ratio. An individual is born, grows, dies, and also show its age, but it cannot describe its birth rate, death rate, or age ratio. Thomas Malthus 1798 observed that populations increase geometrically or exponentially, whereas their food supplies and means of subsistence increase arithmetically. In exponential increase, a number beginning with the base number 2 and an exponent of 2 would be represented by the series 2, 4, 16, 256, etc. And so on. In geometric increase, it is a series of numbers having a common ratio such as 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, etc., where the succeeding number is a multiple of the former. But in arithmetic increase, it is a series of number having a common difference such as 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, etc., in which the number differs from others by the 3. Same quantity. He also proposed that the growth of population eventually limited by resource supply and further increase leads to population crash due to disease, war, and other natural calamities. Rapid increase in the human population is associated with industrial revolution, and there is need to formulate appropriate measures to check the population explosion. 3. Growth forms. Populations have characteristic patterns of increase called population growth forms. The two basic patterns based on the shapes of arithmetic plots of growth curves are the J-shaped and S-shaped or sigmoid growth form. When a few individuals are introduced into a suitable but unoccupied area with an unlimited environment, its population will tend to increase geometrically. In the real world, however, there are limits to growth. We call the maximum number of individuals of any species that can be supported by a particular ecosystem on a sustainable basis its carrying capacity. At this level, the population theoretically is in equilibrium with its environment. When a population overshoots the carrying capacity of its environment, the growth curve becomes negative and the population decreases. This dieback of population is called population crash. In most cases, population growth is regulated by internal and external factors which keep the population below carrying capacity and make equilibrium of the population with resources available in the habitat. These species show exponential growth in the presence of unlimited resources. However, their growth tends to slow down when their number reaches near the carrying capacity of the environment. This pattern is called logistic growth because of its constantly changing rate. The growth curve described by such a population is S-shaped or sigmoid curve. 4. Historical background. An insight into the human history indicates that human populations have not been very large in comparison to other species. For thousands of years, the population growth has been very slow. Figure 1. Archaeological evidence and historical description suggest that only about 300 million people were living at the time of Christ Pop. Ref. Bureau, Inc., Washington, D.C. The population was limited by high mortality and even in great civilization of Egypt. 4. Greece and Rome, expectancy of life did not exceed 30 years. The checks were by disease, famine, and wars. 25% of the adult population of Europe died in the epidemics of bubonic plague in the 14th century. The diseases like malaria and yellow fever severely limited the abundance and distribution of people in tropical countries. Figure point 1. World human population from 10,000 BC to present day. Human populations showed rapid growth only after AD 1600. This was mainly because of rapid growth in the field of agriculture, industry, commerce, and power. Better medical facilities and hygiene also played an important role in population growth. The figure 2 summarizes the global changes driven by interaction of population, economy, environment, and culture. 5. Population. Culture. Including politics and education. Environment, economy. Figure point 2. Global change is regulated by population, economy, environment, and culture. As a result of developmental activities around the world, human population is now experiencing exponential or J-shaped pattern of growth. The population reached 1 billion marks in 1804, but it took about 150 years to reach 3 billion marks in 1960. The global human population has crossed the 7 billion mark in 2015. The needs of this huge number of human beings cannot be supported by the Earth's natural resources without degrading the quality of human life. Apart from birth and death, the size of a population is affected by immigration and emigration, as some individuals are constantly entering or leaving the population. Therefore, the population projection for the future can be had from the equation given below. N future equals N present plus BD plus I, E. Where N future is the predicted population size at a given time in the future and N present is the present population size, B is birth rate, D is death rate, and I and E are immigration and emigration, respectively. 6. 5. Global human population growth. The human population is increasing at a rate which outstrips the capacity of social and physical resources. Every second, on an average, 4 or 5 children are born somewhere on the Earth, and at the same time 2 people die, and it amounts to a net gain of approximately 2.5 more humans per second in the world population. We became the most numerous species on this planet when we reached the 6.3 billion numbers in 2003. Population size changes due to births, deaths, and migration. Birth rates and death rates are decreasing worldwide, but death rates have fallen more sharply than birth rates. The exponential growth rate has not disappeared but occurring at a slower rate. India reached a population of 1.1 billion in 2003, and if current growth rate continues, India will have 1.63 billion people in 2050 and will overtake China as the most populous country, but it will be a great problem for India to provide food, housing, education, employment and health care to its entire people. Approximately, one-fourth of its population may be living in very poor conditions. The growth of human population occurs more than 90 million per year, out of which 93% of the population growth occurs in developing countries. This huge growth will restrict the further economic development of population. If no proper action is taken to prevent the population growth, it will become a staggering 7.92 billion. Figure 3. Human population increased from 1 to 2 billion, in 123 years 2 to 3 billion, in 33 years 3 to 4 billion, in 14 years 4 to 5 billion, in 13 years 5 to 6 billion, in 11 years 3 to 4 billion, in 14 years 4 to 5 billion, in 13 years 5 to 6 billion, in 11 years. 7. Figure point 3. Graph showing global human population growth. The projected world human population is estimated to reach its peaks at 9.22 billion in the year 2075. According to United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs UNDES, 2004, the human population grows slightly beyond 8.92 billion projected for 2050 in the year 2002, on which these projections are based. Figure 4. According to new prediction, world population would grow up to 10.6 billion or 7.4 billion by 2050 based on high and low scenarios of annual growth rate. The average growth rates of human population for 2020-50 range from 1.12 to 0.40% in increments from 91.3 to 26.8 million per year. 8. Figure point 4. Estimated world population, 1952,000, and projections, 2000-2050. It is not the census figures alone which need to be worried, but also its impact on depletion of natural resources should be taken into consideration. The depletion of natural resources will further increase by wealthy societies that consume more resources per capita as compared to poor societies. So, it becomes necessary to develop new strategies and principles for more equitable distribution of resources. Rich and poor countries alike are affected by population growth, though the populations of developed countries are growing slowly as compared to poor developing countries. The world's human population growth at the present rate also calls for meeting the requirement for food, shelter, drinking water, hygiene, healthcare, and education. However, in the poor developing countries, extra efforts are needed to meet the requirement and to maintain the social and economic condition of people. There are several views regarding the overpopulation growth. According to one view, overpopulation will lead to resource depletion and environmental degradation, causing the life support system to collapse. There will be increase in pressure for birth control programs and to reduce the fertility rates. The second view is that human ingenuity, technology, and 9. Enterprise can extend the world's carrying capacity, enabling the people to overcome any problem encountered. Some people believe that current shortages are artificial and creation of few rich people because of their tendency of greed, wastefulness, and oppression. The root cause of environmental degradation seems to be inequitable distribution of wealth and power. 6. Demography. Demographically, the world can be divided into two contrasting groups. One group is that part of the world which has less developed countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, representing 80% of the world's population. Here, the people are poor, young, and population growth rate is very high, and 90% of the projected world's population growth is expected here. In Oman and Palestine, population growth rate is very high and the doubling time is only 18 years. The other group is of richer countries of America, Western Europe, Japan, and Australia. This part of the world is wealthy, old, and populations do not show sign of growth. While USA and Canada may have nearly stable population, if they completely stop immigrations, countries like Italy, Hungary, Germany, and Japan have negative growth rates. Germany has the lowest birth rate in the Europe, with 8.5 births per 1,000 inhabitants, and if this declining trend in population continues, then Germany would die out entirely by 2300. The world seems to be divided into geriatric and pediatric societies. In Europe, the individuals having age above 50 years outweighs the number of individual below 15 years. The figure 5 represents the total resident population of United States in 2015. 10. Figure point 5. Population pyramid of United States in 2015. However, in Africa and other developing countries, the condition is just the other way around. In case of Russia, human population is declining around 1 million people per year as it has very high death rates and very low birth rates, and the population seems to be completely demoralized. For progress and welfare of the people in less developed countries, population growth has to be controlled and an attempt should be made to attain zero population growth (ZPG). However, it takes several generations of replacement level fertility to reach ZPG. Of replacement level fertility to reach ZPG. Replacement level fertility is the number. 0.1 is considered to be the population replacement level, while for Germany, it is 1.37, Spain, 1.32, Greece, 1.29, and Italy, 1.33. Thus, fast declining birth rate is a headache for the European countries. Fertility is to be differentiated from fecundity. Fecundity is the physical ability to reproduce. Fertility describes the actual production of offsprings. Therefore, a person without children may be fecund but not fertile. Fertility rate, the number 11. Of children born to an average woman in a population during the entire reproductive period, has declined considerably in every part of the world in the last 50 years. The greatest fertility reduction has been in Southeast Asia. Bangladesh has reduced its fertility rate from 6.9 in 1980 to 3.1 children per woman in 1978. In China, fertility rate has reduced from 6 in 1970 to 1.8 in 1990, and if fertility decline follows a pattern of Bangladesh and China, the population of the world may show a decline by the end of 21st century. Global transformation in human health in 20th century led to an increase in life expectancy, which can be defined as the average age that a newborn infant can expect to attain in any given society. For example, in 1900 the average Indian could live less than 23 years. The life expectancy has increased to nearly 3 times in 2000. The increase in life expectancy is attributed to better nutrition, improved sanitary condition and medical facilities. 7. Demographic transition. Demographic transition is based on interpretation of American demographer, Warren Thompson, 1929. He observed transition in birth and death rates in industrialized societies in the past 200 years. Demographer, Frank Notestein, 1945, also observed a typical pattern of falling death rates and birth rates due to improved living conditions accompanied by economic development. He called this pattern demographic transition from high birth and death rates to lower birth and death rates. The transition takes place in 4 stages. 7.1. Pre-industrial phase. A balance between birth and death rates till the late 18th century characterizes it. The birth and death rates are high, around 30 to 50 per thousand, and population growth is slow. Sometimes, it is also called a stationary stage of population growth, high, birth and death rates, stationary, rate and, stationary, total population numbers. High death rates were due to disease, food shortage and poor living conditions. High birth rates could have been due to factors associated with high fertility, seen even today in less developed countries. 7.2. Transitional stage. There is increase in population due to decline in death rate, but birth rate remains high. The decline in death rate is due to improvement in food supply, high agricultural yields and 12. Improvement in public health systems like water supply, sewage, food handling and personal hygiene, as well as female literacy. Due to decline in death rate, rapid increase in population growth occurs and the gap between birth and death become wider. There is a change in the age structure of the population as deaths are confined to 5 to 10 years ages. The decline in death rate resulted in increased survival of children and the age structure of the population became expanding type. The population increase may be 2.5 to 3.0% per year. 7.3. Industrial stage. It is characterized by a fall in birth rates, which eventually approaches the death rates as industrialization and modernization become widespread. Population growth continues but at a slower rate depending on the economic conditions. In rural areas people realize the need not to have many children for comfortable old age. Increased female literacy and employment helped females in influencing childbearing decisions. Improved contraceptive technologies helped in the second half of the 20th century. Towards the end of industrial stage, the fertility level falls close to replacement levels but population growth continues on account of population momentum. Most of the developed countries are in the third stage of transition and a few developing countries are entering this stage. 7.4. Post-industrial stage. It is characterized by stability of the population. The decline in birth rates continues further till it equals the death rate and thus reaching the zero population growth. The birth rate falls below the death rate and the total population size decline gradually till the zero population growth rates are attained. The population age structure becomes older. It is estimated that 38 countries of Europe containing about 13% of the world population have entered this stage. In most of the developing countries today, death rates have fallen much more than birth rates and these countries are still in the transitional stage. The population growth rate is high and economic development is not fully attained. Some economists are of the view that these developing countries will make the demographic transition over the next few decades without increased family welfare efforts. Many workers are of the opinion that 13. Rapid population growth in developing countries will outstrip economic growth and degrade local life support system. These countries may be trapped in demographic transitional stage, as in Africa, where some of the countries are affected by HIV/AIDS epidemic and are falling back to the pre-industrial phase of demographic transition as the death rate rises. The factors that allowed developing countries to develop are not available to many of the developing countries, as they could not have enough workers to produce technically advanced products needed to compete in the global economy. They lack the capital and the resources needed for economic development. Since 1980, the developing countries have experienced a drop in economic assistance from developed countries and a rise in their debt to such countries will slow down the pace of development. On an optimistic note, some of the factors that help in stabilizing population growth are as follows. Social reforms coupled with growing prosperity leads to reduced desire for large families. Modern technology can be made use of in making the developing countries advanced much earlier. Developing countries can learn from the mistakes of more developed countries and devise strategies to attain stability at the earliest. Modern communications have helped in improving the living standard of the people by exposing them to the developments in the world. Many people feel that social justice is the key to successful demographic transitions. The world has enough resources for everyone, but inequitable social and economic system leads to maldistribution of these resources. It is believed that unequal distribution of resources rather than lack of them is the root cause of poverty, hunger, violence, overpopulation and environmental deterioration. 8. Population growth in India. 14. India is a developing country. On one side, it is engaged in developmental activities, while on the other side, it is struggling with the ways and means of controlling its rapidly increasing population. Figure 6. Figure point 6. Human population growth in India. The first family program of the world was launched in India in 1952 and at that time its population was 400 million. In 2003, after 51 years, India's population was 1.1 billion and it was the world's second most populous country. The population and sex ratio of India from 1901 to 2001, on the basis of census is taken every 10 years. The figure 7 represents the total Indian population in 2001. 15. Figure point 7. Population pyramid of India in 2001. Source: Population Reference Bureau, 2007. The average population density of India was 324 people per square km in 2001. West Bengal had the highest population density of 903 people per square kilometer and Bihar was the second among states. However, Delhi had the highest density of 9,340 people per square kilometer and Chandigarh was the second with a population density of 7,900 people per square kilometer. Figure 8 demonstrate the population density in different states of India. The sex ratio is unfavorable to females. It was 933 females, 1,000 males in 2001. India has 2.4% of the world's surface area but sustains 16.7% of the world population. 16. Figure point 8. Map demonstrates the population density in India. These human populations are not forecasts, but these are actual scenarios of future population size, which is made on the basis of present situation and the assumptions made for future trends. It is believed that fertility rate will decline where it is presently high, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, as in other states. Hence, the future fertility trends will decide India's future population size. The United Nations Population Division (UNPD) made an estimation of population of India in 3 variants: low, medium and high. For 2025, the population estimation varied from 1.37 to 1.55 billion. The UNPD further extend their prediction of population to 2050, which range from 1.39 to 1.96 billion compared to scenario of 1.81 billion and scenario B of 1.74 billion in 2050. Scenarios A represent the prediction of population size by assuming total fertility rate TFR of 2.1 and scenario B having TFR of 1.85. Scenarios A, with TFR of 2.1, results in 17. 18. Population size of 2 billion in 2066 minus 2071. However, scenario B, with TFR of 1.85, does not reach 2 billion of population size. Under scenario B, the population growth reaches to maximum in 2081-2086, after which it begins to decrease. Figure 9. Figure point 9. Projection of Indian human population with scenario A TFR 2.1 and scenario B TFR 1.85. The National Commission on Population was constituted under the chairmanship of the Prime Minister to provide overall guidance for population stabilization by promoting synergy between demographic, educational, environmental and developmental programs. The high fertility states in India are Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Orissa. India is projected to have a larger population than China by 2050, even if China relaxes their one-child policy. Though the Indian government is doing its best to improve the living standard of its ever-increasing population by providing employment, housing, food and education, but the situation may worsen if the population continues to grow rapidly. By global standards, Indian people are poor and nearly half of its labor force is unemployed or finds occasional work. The only good news is that India is currently self-sufficient in food grain production, but still 40% of its population and 53% of its children suffer from malnutrition, mainly because of poverty. About half of the country's cropland is degraded as a result of soil erosion, waterlogging, salination, overgrazing and deforestation. Also 70% of India's water is polluted and sanitation services are often inadequate. The results of family welfare programs have not been very encouraging, maybe because of poor planning, bureaucratic inefficiency, the low status of women and lack of administrative and financial support. The government has propagated the advantages of small families, but still Indian women have on average 3.1 children. The poor people believe that they need many children to do work and care for their old age. Generally, there is a strong preference for male children and couples keep on having children until they have a boy. Thus, in spite of the awareness of the family welfare programs in majority of the population, about half of the people may be using some methods of birth control. 9. Methods of population control. The different methods of population control include family welfare programs, which provide maximum freedom of choice to each couple to plan the number and spacing of their children and does not necessarily mean having fewer children. Socioeconomic measures, which include large-scale educational programs through schools and other communication media to explain people about the advantages of small families to themselves and to the society. The tax laws can be adjusted to favor single child, working wife and small families. There can be an increase in marriage fees, tax on luxury goods and baby toys, removal of family allowances and limitation of educational benefits to 2 children per family wherever they exist. Other measures include late marriage and childlessness. A special kind of social security pension could be provided for aging adults who have no children to support them in the old age. Social pressure on both men and women to marry and have children must be removed and alternative lifestyle should be open to single people and childless couples. Birth control methods mean any method to reduce births. Modern medicines give more options for controlling fertility than were available to our ancestors. 19. The methods of birth control which prevent the meeting of sperm and ovum are as follows. I. Avoidance of sex during fertile periods, e.g. celibacy, using changes in body temperature or cervical mucus to judge when ovulation occurs. E. Mechanical barriers that prevent contact between sperm and egg, e.g. condoms. Spermicides, diaphragms, cervical caps and vaginal sponges. E. Surgical methods that prevent release of sperms or eggs, e.g. tubal ligations in females and vasectomy in males. IV chemicals that prevent maturation or release of sperms or eggs or embryo implantation in the uterus, e.g. progesterone or estrogen and progesterone for females, and for males it is gosipol. B. Physical barriers to implantation, e.g. intrauterine devices. B. Abortion or termination of pregnancy. Some of the methods that may not be very successful with the population include compulsory sterilization of women after 2 to 3 children or compulsory implantation of steroid capsule at puberty, which can be removed for childbearing with official permission. Technically impossible but theoretically feasible is that fertility-reducing agents can be added to staple food and water. 10. Summary. Populations are not static entities and all the organisms have the capacity for substantial population growth. Populations have characteristic patterns of increase called population growth forms. The 2 basic patterns based on the shapes of arithmetic plots of growth curves are the J-shaped and S-shaped or sigmoid growth form. 20. Demographically, the world can be divided into 2 contrasting groups. One group is that part of the world which has less developed countries of Africa, Asia and Latin America representing 80% of the world's population. The other group is in America, Western Europe, Japan and Australia. This part of the world is wealthy, old and populations do not show sign of growth. For progress and welfare of the people in developing countries, population growth has to be controlled and an attempt should be made to attain zero population growth (ZPG). The demographic transition takes place in 4 stages. Pre-industrial phase was characterized by a balance between birth and death rates till the late 18th century. Transitional stage was characterized by increase in population due to improvement in food supply and public health systems like water. Industrial stage is characterized by a fall in birth rates, which eventually approaches the death rates as industrialization and modernization become widespread. Post-industrial stage is characterized by stability of the population. India is a developing country which is struggling with the ways and means of controlling its rapidly increasing population. Different methods of population control include family welfare programs, socio-economic measures and different methods of birth control. 21. 1.